Hey, check out this shiplap. Not that shiplap, this shiplap up here. Up here, come check it out. Welcome to Dude Sawdust. I'm Carpenter Logan, and this is my good friend Dusty Bottoms. We installed this wall with shiplap, and we're gonna show you how we did it.
And we're gonna do it right now.
Welcome to the loft. Now I know what you're thinking. This is a boring and drab wall, but fear not, because we are gonna turn this into an accent wall by applying shiplap. This room doesn't come without its challenges though, and you can see that the door is so close to the wall. I racked my brain with how to deal with this situation, and frankly, I just wish the door was about 2 feet to the right. But between the trim of the door and the wall, I only have about a ½ inch at most. Fortunately, my Aunt Robin gave me a great idea that we'll be showing you a little bit later in the video, but let's get started with the demo. The demo consists of essentially removing the trim around the doors as well as the baseboards. Now if you're looking for an in-depth review of how to remove baseboards, check out my skim coating video where I go over it in detail and show you all the tools you'll need. Dusty Bottoms tried to convince me that this is his best angle, although I don't think I agree. Now that the demo was complete, it was time to mark our studs with a chalk line. This is a great tip, and if you're interested in more tips, check out this other video Dusty Bottoms and I did about the 15 don'ts of shiplap installation. Once the chalk lines were done, we were able to start with our very first piece of shiplap at the bottom. I recommend starting at the bottom and not at the top. And when you do it, make sure that it's level and exactly how you want it, because the rest of the boards are going to follow that same exact level line.
When do the Slurpees get here?
Dusty works at his best when offered treats. Oh, I almost forgot. Don't forget to remove the plates from your electrical outlets, because you'll need to cut holes in your shiplap to fit the size of the electrical boxes behind those plates. I find the jigsaw to be the ideal tool for cutting these holes.
Oh, you're not supposed to touch that side.
Yeah.
That's a live plug there, though.
I'm awake. Whenever you're working around electrical outlets, always make sure you leave the power on. I mean, off. Leave the power off. Turn it off, because you don't want to get shocked. Whenever I install shiplap, I always think, once I get past the outlets, we'll be home free. But there's always a ton of work to do after that. It really is a lot of rinse and repeat. You're just putting boards up on the wall. But to make it look right and to do the job well, there are the little details that you really got to focus on. If you're wondering why it's called shiplap, that's because shiplap was a style of board that they used to make ships to create a watertight, weatherproof barrier. The edges of the boards have a rabbet joint. Not the kind of rabbit bunny that hops around in the forest, but rabbet, R-A-B-B-E-T. When the two rabbet joints are laid on top of each other, it creates a gap, and that's because one rabbet joint is bigger than the other. The gap should be about 1/8 of an inch thick, or the thickness of a nickel. Sometimes it's called nickel gap. Or you could use your carpenter square, and that's about 1/8 of an inch thick as well, if you're ever creating your own gaps. We're not building a boat here, but it's the style that we glean from that creates this really cool, sort of farmhousey kind of look. My wife and I aren't really into the nautical themes, but this would actually look really nice in a beachside home or something like that. Since the loft is upstairs and the shop is downstairs in the garage, there was quite a bit of walking up and down. Definitely got my steps in. Dusty Bottoms, so far, not too bad. We, earlier on, cut a bunch of boards too short. We made a little mistake.
We never make mistakes.
Nothing we can't work past. We're not going to have to buy new boards, I don't believe. But we got to take them to the stud because we're short here. I don't have any more boards that are going to make it this long. Maybe one, but we got some boards that will make it this far. So actually they go about here. We're cutting them short. We're going to fill this in. The lines here, you're not going to see them because we're going to do a little bit of something, then I'm going to show you later how I do that. But we just got to take the boards, the shiplap all the way to the top. Other than that, how do you think it's going?
It's going well.
I think it's going well. I appreciate you guys sticking with us through this far. When installing shiplap, I love using my 16 gauge Ryobi finish nailer. I also have an 18 gauge brad nailer that works just as well too, but I enjoy using the bigger, thicker nail, and some people like the smaller nail holes that are left by the 18 gauge. Whatever works for you is fine. Either one will work. I like shiplap that has no seams between the boards. Some people like to stagger the ends of the boards throughout the wall. That's a harder look to accomplish, because if the end of the board isn't ending on the stud, then they can come up against the wall and not sit flush. Walls notoriously are not straight, and we definitely came across this problem with this particular wall. The wall is not straight, it's not flat. So boards will come and pop out if they're not secured to the wall. At that point, maybe construction adhesive is the way to go, but I just don't like doing that. Once you get to the top, you may realize you'll have to cut off a piece of the final shiplap so it'll fit at the very top. This project was no exception. Now that we have the final boards put up, it's time to focus on the trim around the door. This is where we have to get a little creative. The first thing is to put shiplap in this thin area between the wall and the door, but this shiplap will not even be seen. I feel like it's super imperative that the trim around the door pop. There needs to be a reveal. It cannot be flush against the shiplap. So that's why we need the shiplap to come underneath the trim. Keep watching because this is gonna make sense. We tilted the table saw blade to 45 degrees and then cut the trim at 45 degrees on one side all the way around. So as a result, we have 3 door trim pieces along with an opposing mitered trim piece to create a 90-degree angle. We taped them all together, opened them up, and then applied glue. Closed it up using the tape as clamps, gave it at least 30 minutes to dry, and then they're ready to put up as trim around the door. So I racked my brain with what I should do with the trim on the left side of the door. I was kind of thinking maybe I should put a thin piece of trim all the way up the wall. And then I thought, well, what if I just put little itty bitty thin pieces of shiplap? But none of that would have flowed. None of that would have looked good. And that's when my Aunt Robin gave me a great idea. She said, hey, take the trim on the door and just make it wider. Run it all the way up the side of the wall and blend it all in. And I thought, you know what? I think I'll do that. Oh, and if you've watched this much of the video, go ahead and hit that like button, and then hit the subscribe button, and then hit the bell. Ring that bell so you always get notified of all the videos we have coming out. We'd really appreciate your support. Just a few more steps to go. Now we put on the baseboard, making sure that it's level with the lines of the shiplap and flush with the door trim. Installing the trim to the ceiling presented itself as much more challenging. The ceiling was so uneven that we needed to make a few custom cuts to the top trim. So we used a pencil and a washer to glide along the ceiling to make those contoured lines. That way we could make the cuts that would be fit to the ceiling. Any remaining gaps after that could easily be hidden and filled in with caulking. In order to create that great final product, I used Drydex spackling to fill all the nail holes, and in order to create a seamless board-to-board, end-to-end look with the shiplap, you take that same Drydex spackling, fill in those gaps, and then sand it down. After you paint it, you won't even notice where one board ends and the other one begins. All of the existing trim in the upstairs is Swiss coffee, and my wife Amy is our resident painter, so she took care of that job. Honestly, she doesn't trust me to do the painting since I'm clearly not as good as she is. But just take a real good look. No seams between the boards. That's exactly what I was going for.
This shiplap wall is complete. We had a little trouble with the ceiling, of course. It wasn't perfect. The trim came out phenomenal, seamless, just like we wanted it. Dusty Bottoms, looks like you got your Slurpee.
I like blue.
He likes blue. Sometimes you gotta reward those that help you out a little bit. And he did a good job, so I got him a Slurpee. Special thanks to my Aunt Robin for giving me the great idea on the trim. I'm keeping it just as wide along the entire side of the wall. And if you're doing your own shiplap project, check out this video right here, where we go over the 15 don'ts of shiplap installation. You're not gonna wanna miss that. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Carpenter Logan. Once again, this is my good friend, Dusty Bottoms. We love that you arrived, and we'll see you on the next time.